Welcome back to Make It Mondays, and this time I'm working on a Entrelac knitted blanket. And it's going to be out of this very fluffy homespun yarn. You might remember this from a blanket from a while ago. I still had more of it, so it's time to make another blanket. So let me get everything set up and I will show you where I am and how it's going together. So I'm going to show you a little bit about how this piece works. So I am slipping the first stitch, and this row is actually just purl all the way across. So this is a variation of the simple washcloth or burp cloth that is on my Etsy page. But this time around, it is a little bit different, but it's just a knit purl pattern. For this row, I'm literally just purling all the way across. But what's interesting is how Entrelac connects to itself. So as I'm working across, I'm going from one side of the block. So there's a gap here between the first block of this set and the second block. It's not a row per se because it's actually a diagonal. So Entrelac, how I'm doing it, will go from one corner of the blanket to the other diagonal corner of the blanket. So I'm coming up to where the seam is that you saw from the front. So the seam is going to be right here. So it looks like slip stitches from the front or knit stitches. And I'm actually going to purl that last purple stitch and that first blue stitch together. And then I'm going to flip the whole thing around and work back. So I'm going to keep going on this one, possibly another block past there, and I'll show you how everything starts when I start a new block. So here is where the blanket is now. So I have done the first square, next two, and then 1, 2, 3. So now the next square is going to attach onto this row of stitches. But that means I have to cast it onto this needle. This will be a row of 4 squares. This is as large of a row as I'm going to have going across because it is a 4 by 6 square grid. Actually, I'm going to make that tail a little bit longer. The downside with this particular style of yarn is it's actually a pain in the butt to weave in because it just shreds. So I tend to leave a slightly longer tail. And on this project, I'm trying to weave it in much earlier than at the very end of the project. I'm going to really hate casting on because very sharp needles and very splittable yarn, which is a interesting combination. And I know it's very busy behind where the needles are. Unfortunately, that's just how this project has to work. But I'm going to work all the way across, or I'm going to cast on all the way across. And so you guys can see this is how the skeins of yarn look when they are brand new. So there's a little bit of the fluff that came out when I started this one. So this end was tucked inside, and then this is the pulling from the inside tail. I'm actually going to put it on my left-hand side so it's a bit easier to work with. So this is a 30 stitch by 61 row grid. The edges are done in garter stitch, which means each row has the same stitch on each side, either knit for the blocks like this one or purl for the ones like the last set of 3. Okay. And then the center alternates between stockinette. So the smooth fabric, like here, and the garter, which is the bumpies. Okay, so I'm at 20 stitches now. And yeah, this first row is just a little harder because I am pulling pretty tight. This yarn doesn't actually have any elasticity to it. It's the it's the knitting itself that gives the fabric the elasticity. Oops, 2, 4, 6, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 18, 20, 2, 4, 6, 7, 8, and 9. And I'm effectively turning the whole square around, and I'm knitting into this very first stitch. Then going back to the direction that I was in, slipping that stitch, and then knitting across. So from here, it's just the pattern of setting up the garter edge and then setting up the squares inside. And then, of course, connecting it up the side. So I will be back when it's time to pick up a square from a side edge so you guys can see how that works. So I've gotten to the edge of one diagonal row for the blanket. I'm going to be starting to head back on a right side row. So this is my yarn for this time. I'm going to be picking up stitches along this row. So this is why I slip stitched the first stitch of all the rows. It makes it way easier to reach in and grab a stitch. I'm going directly into the V, and I know in homespun yarn it's really hard to see it. So I'm going to put my needle in so it's both strands and all the way down. That's how the pickups work on the knit side. It's just the same on the purl side, just I'm going from the other side and picking up from the back. But I'm having all these lines on the front so that all of them look the same on the front. Okay, so I'm going to keep going on this. I will be back when the whole blanket is done. Currently, I'm a little over halfway, but for you, it's just going to be a blink of an eye. So I'll be back in a second. And here's the finished blanket. So it took 8 skeins of yarn to finish the whole thing, but this is the first fully knit blanket of 2024. And I will see you next time on Make It Mondays. If you liked this video, please remember to like and subscribe down below, and I will see you next time. Bye!